Hello, my friends. We continue from where we stopped on question 26. 26. You are a project manager on a research project and you need to identify, document, approve, or reject modifications to the project. What is the best definition of this process? Give it some time and think about it. Okay, so my friends, the way this works, I'm going to be going through these very quickly, but if you need more time, hit the pause button, select an answer in your head before taking a look at my answer, okay? So the best answer to this, my friends, is none other than change control. This is the best definition. If you go back and take a look at all the options you had issues and risks, you had decision-making process, and you had change control board. It's saying what is the best definition of this particular process. And this is the process of change control. And that is the best answer. It's not a change control board as a process. It's change control itself. All right, let's move on. Next question. You are a project manager on a software development project and you need to describe how modifications to the project deliverables and documentation are managed and controlled. What is the best definition of this description? I'll give you some time. All right, let's take a look at the answer now, my friends. So it is asking you a name for how modifications to the deliverables and documentation are managed and controlled. And therefore, the best answer to this is none other than a change control system. This is a direct cutout of what you have in PMI's documentation. A change control system is a set of procedures that describes how modifications to the project deliverables and documentation are managed and controlled. And you can read the rest of the information. All right, let's move on to our next question. The next question is 28. You're a project manager on a construction project and you need to use manual or automated tools to assist with change and or configuration management. What is the best definition of these tools? Now, you don't need a whole lot of time for this, so I will reveal the answer. Okay, the best answer for this is change control tools. Change control tools are manual or automated tools to assist with change and or configuration management. At a minimum, the tool should support the activities of the CCB. In this scenario, using manual or automated tools to assist with change and or configuration management in the construction project would involve using change control tools. All right, let's move on to our next question. You are a project manager on a research project and you need to have a comprehensive list of changes submitted during the project and their current status. What is the best definition of this list? Okay. So, my friends, the answer to this, it's asking for none other than a change log. Change log is a comprehensive list of changes submitted during the project and their current status. In this scenario, having a comprehensive list of changes submitted during the research project and their current status would involve having a change log. All right, so best answer to this is C. Let's move on to the next one. Question 30. You are project manager on a marketing campaign and you need to establish a component of the project management plan that establishes the change control board, documents the extent of its authority, and describes how the change control system will be implemented. What is the best definition of this component? All right. I will reveal the answer. Okay. So the answer to this, my friends, is none other than option D. And this is a change management plan. As it reads here, the change management plan is a component of the project management plan that establishes the change control board, documents the extent of its authority, and describes how the change control system will be implemented. It's a direct cutout of definitions given to you by the PMI in the PMBOK Guide 6th edition and Process Groups of Practice Guide. Let's move on. You are a project manager on a software development project and you need to make a formal proposal to modify a document, deliverable, or baseline. What is the best definition of this proposal? I'll give you some time to think about it a little. Okay. Let's end the poll. And the best answer to this, my friends, as you've probably deciphered, we're talking about what we call that proposal. It's a change request. A change request is a formal proposal to modify a document, deliverable, or baseline. In this scenario, making a formal proposal to modify a document, deliverable, or baseline in the software development project would involve making a change request. Okay, so I hope you're finding value from this and I hope it's all making sense. And if you are enjoying this content, please hit like on this video and subscribe. It helps people know about this channel and the plethora of training aids that we have here. Over 2,000 videos and counting, my friends. All right, let's move on to the next question. Question 32. You are a project manager on a construction project and you need to systematically review materials using a list for accuracy and completeness. What is the best approach to use for this purpose? I'll give you some time to think. All right. 3, 2, and 1. All right, my friends. The best answer to this is, as you can see, checklist analysis. It is a technique for systematically reviewing materials using a list for accuracy and completeness. In this scenario, systematically reviewing materials in the construction project using a list for accuracy and completeness will involve using a checklist. So let's go a step back just in case you had any questions about it. So a risk log is really the same as a risk register. It's a log of uncertainty. So that would not be the best option. Variance analysis looks at actual results versus planned results. This would not be the best thing to use because we're talking specifically about materials and using a list. Variance analysis does not include a list. Regression analysis is really looking at your results and asking the question, how did we get to these results, good or bad? So again, this does not use a list. And that is why the best answer to this is checklist analysis, which does use a list, going through the list and ensuring accuracy and completeness. Here's your next question. You are a project manager on a research project and you need to use a tally sheet that can be used as a checklist when gathering data. What is the best definition of this tally sheet? If you've read chapter 8 in the 6th edition, this should be a cakewalk for you. Okay, let's take a look at the answer. So the answer to this, my friends, is B. It's check sheets. Check sheets in the PMBOK guide and process groups or practice guide where described fits this description. Check sheets are a tally sheet that can be used as a checklist when gathering data. The cool thing about tally sheets is not only is it used as a checklist, but it's also used as a way of logging how many defects you found per area and things such as that. All right, let's move on. Question 34. You are a project manager on a marketing campaign and you need to make a request, demand, or assertion of rights by a seller against a buyer, or vice versa, for consideration, compensation, or payment under the terms of a legally binding contract. What is the best definition of this request, demand, or assertion of rights? This is a very straightforward one. I'll give you a few seconds. All right. 3, 2, and 1. The best answer for this, my friends, in the context of your project management world, is claims. This is what we call them, right? So a claim is a request, demand, or assertion of rights by a seller against a buyer or vice versa, exactly like you had in the question. So in this scenario, this is a claim. All right. I hope this is affirming your understanding of some of the terms that you might have thought about but not really put a finger on them. Here we go. 35. You're a project manager on a software development project and you need to process, adjudicate, and communicate contract claims. What is the best definition for this process? You need to know chapter 12 in the PMBOK 6th edition, or in process groups or practice guide, you got to understand the concept of procurements. Okay, let's go ahead and end the poll. Hit the pause button if you need more time. The best answer to this, my friends, is A, claims administration. This is the process of processing, adjudicating, and communicating contract claims. In this scenario, processing, adjudicating, and communicating contract claims is a software development. In the software development project would involve using claims administration. All right, so I hope all of this stuff is making sense to you. If you find any gaps, just go back, close the gaps, read the content a little bit more. This is all about the lingo. These few first questions, all the way to 50, you realize they're really all about the lingo, understanding project management lingo for your exam. Question 36. You're a project manager on a construction project and you need to finalize all activities for the project. What is the best definition for this process? All right. So, my friends, there's a difference here in getting to the answer. There's a difference between close project or phase, which is a process, versus the close-in process group, which is a process group. And therefore, the best answer to this is close project or phase, because that is a process. It is the process of finalizing all activities for the project, phase, or contract. In this scenario, finalizing all activities in the construction project will involve using the close project or phase process. Let's move on to our next one. You are a project manager on an IT project and you need to perform the processes to formally complete or close the project. What is the best definition for this process? I'll let you think about it for a little bit. All right, let's take a look at the answer now, my friends. Hopefully this was not a showstopper for you. The answer to this is C. This is the closing process group. So if you go back, it says, what is the best definition for this process? So again, you're looking for something that matches. Even though you're looking for a process and you're not able to find the process, you got to choose the next best option. So close project or phase isn't here. It's not planned project or phase, obviously. It's not monitoring the work because that doesn't close anything out. So closing process group would be the next available option. And this is a great example of how you could have a similar question with one option removed and the option that wasn't the best option in the previous question now becomes the best option in a different question. All right, number 38. You're a project manager on a research project and you need to use a numbering system to uniquely identify each component of the work breakdown structure WBS. What is the best definition for this numbering system? Give it some thought. This is from chapter 5 in the PMP Guide 6th edition, or the scope area. Okay, let's take a look now, my friends, at what the answer is. So the best answer to this question is a code of accounts, because this is the numbering system used to uniquely identify each component of the WBS. In this scenario, using a WBS numbering system to uniquely identify each component of the WBS in the research project would involve using a code of accounts. Next question. You are a project manager on a marketing campaign and you need to determine, document, and manage stakeholder needs and requirements to meet project objectives. What is the best definition of this process? All right, this is a pretty straightforward one. Okay, the name kind of gives it away. All right, so the best answer, my friends, is A. It's collect requirements. It's the process of determining, documenting, and managing stakeholder needs and requirements to meet project objectives. All right, so there's all the info. Let's move on. Next question. You are a project manager on a product development project and you need to obtain seller responses, select a seller, and award a contract. What is the best definition of this for this process? Take a look at the multiple steps and give it some thought. I'll give you a minute. All right, 3, 2, and 1. Let's take a look at the correct answer. So the best answer to this, my friends, is conduct procurements. This is where we're doing the multiple things of obtaining seller responses, selecting a seller, and awarding a contract. Pretty straightforward. Okay? All right, let's move on. Number 41. You are a project manager on a project and you need to describe how to identify and account for project artifacts under configuration control and how to record and report changes to them. What is the best definition for this? I'll give you some time. All right, let's take a look at the answer. So the best option here, my friends, is configuration management plan. This is a component of the project management plan that describes how to identify and account for project artifacts under configuration control and how to record and report changes to them. So if you take a look at the question, it kind of gave you a clue that this is talking about configuration management, and that's why the answer is not A, C, or D. The change management plan deals more with changes to those documents, but not configuration control. If you read the PMBOK guide, you find that configuration control is very specific to things like versioning, version control, and understanding which version of a document or item or artifact you're dealing with. All right, let's move on to the next one, number 42. You're a project manager on a project and you need to use a collection of procedures to track project artifacts and monitor and control changes to these artifacts. What is the best definition for this collection of procedures? Okay, let's take a look at the answer. So the answer given for this is C. It's a configuration management system. It's a collection of procedures used to track project artifacts and monitor and control changes to these artifacts. So if you're at a loss for what configuration management is and you need more information, I would encourage you to watch my video on this channel. Just look for configuration management versus change management. It explains it pretty detailed. You'll find that on this channel if you search. Question 43. You are a project manager on a project and you need to deliver results that fall within the limits that define acceptable variation for a quality requirement. What is the best definition of this concept? All right. Hit the pause button if you need more time. The best answer to this, my friends, is conformance. This is talking about conformance within the quality management system. It's a general concept of delivering results that fall within the limits that define acceptable variation for quality requirement. And that's why in the world of quality, you hear the word conformance to requirements has been one of the things that defines quality. Let's move on to number 44. You are a project manager on a project and you need to define a limiting factor that affects the execution of the project. What is the best definition for the limiting factor? Okay. Let's go ahead and in 3, 2, 1. Let's take a look at the answer. So, An obstacle is something that you have to go around or over, right? And it's also referred to in the world of Agile generally as an impediment. This is not what we're talking about here, right? The limiting factor language here pertains to one of these more than the others. And it's not an assumption, because an assumption is considered to be true without proof. A risk is uncertainty that could impact your project, but it could be positive or negative. So it's not necessarily a limiting factor because we call it a risk. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a negative risk or threat. So the best answer to this, my friends, is none other than A. It's constraint. A constraint is a limiting factor that affects the execution of a project, program, portfolio, or process. Let's move on to number 45. You are a project manager in an IT company. What is the voice of the customer? You're going to need some more time for this, and I'm going to take myself out of the shot so you can actually see the question better. All right, I think our time is pretty much gone. Take myself out of the shot. So, what is the voice of the customer? A planning technique. B, a type of contract. C, an analytical technique. Or D, a risk. So A talks about a planning technique used to provide products, services, and results that truly reflect customer requirements. That's not a bad option. So with that said, my friends, if you look at all the others, voice of the customer is not a contract, right? Voice of the customer is not an analytical technique that looks at variances, and it's not a risk. Okay? So in light of that, the best answer that you should have chosen is A, a planning technique used to provide products, services, and results that truly reflect customer requirements. Here's your next question. You are a project manager on an IT project and you need to create a visual representation of how the business system will interact with people and other systems. What tool can you use to achieve this? I'll give you a bit of time. All right, 3, 2, and 1. So my friends, the best answer to this is C. It's context diagrams. If you've ever looked in your PMBOK guide, 6th edition, or process groups of practice guide, you find this language here. How a business system interacts with the actors. We call them actors, right? This is straight up your context diagram. It does help going through the glossary and knowing what these terms are, just in case they crop up on the exam. You'll be ready to deal with them. All right, the next one, you have just been informed that there will be a change to the contract for your project. What should you do next? All right, if you need more time, hit that pause button. So if you take a look at these, right, you've been informed that there's going to be a change to the contract. Would you implement the change without documenting it? Right, the answer is probably no, I wouldn't do that. Then you cancel A. Just so you know, on the exam, you can also use this crossing out functionality. It's there in the tools. You wouldn't document the change and submit it to the change control system. That doesn't make sense. Change control system is a collection of processes, so you can't submit a change to a system, right? C, submit the change to the change control board after documenting it. Sounds plausible. D, document the change and approve it yourself. Doesn't make much sense. And that's why the best answer to this, my friends, is C, right? Changes in the world of PMI, predictive project management, they go through the change control board. All right, let's take a look at another question here. You are a project manager for a software development project, and you need to monitor the status of the project to update the project cost and manage changes to the cost baseline. What process should you use? Pretty straightforward. We're almost down to question 50, so this is the big finish. Just a few more. All right, I hope this was straightforward enough. 3, 2, and 1. If you need more time, just hit that pause button. So we have A, estimate cost. Estimate cost is lacking the aspect of monitoring. The same for option D, plan cost. That is lacking when it comes to monitoring. So as usual, the process on the exam would be to cancel those right there on your screen to help you think through it. And C, manage cost, well, there's no such process. So we're going to get rid of that, and the best answer is B, control cost. This involves monitoring the status of the project to update the project cost and manage changes to the cost baseline. Question 49. Let me take myself out of the shot so that you can properly read it. You are a project manager for a construction project, and you need to evaluate the impact of a change request and determine if it requires approval from the change control board. What should you do? I'll give you a bit of time. All right. So let's take a look at the options. A, implement the change without getting approval. So you just think through whenever you get these questions and think about the credibility of what they're saying. Does that make sense? No. B, evaluate the impact of the change and determine if it requires approval from the CCB. Now this is not far out because in the PMBOK guide on page 115, there's a total page about how and why you should approach change requests in a certain way. There's some change requests that may not require CCB approval. In fact, I want to make this very clear to our friends because I know some of you have not been for full-on solid training for the PMP, and therefore you may not have heard from an instructor about certain items. So this item I'm showing you here is the PMBOK Guide 6th edition. If we go to page 115, I'll just read some pieces of it for you. It says, the Perform Integrated Change Control process is conducted from project start through completion and is the ultimate responsibility of the project manager. It then says, change requests can impact the project scope and the product scope, as well as any project management plan component or any project document. Changes may be requested by any stakeholder involved with the project and may occur at any time throughout the project life cycle. It says, before baselines are established, changes are not required to be formally controlled. See, it says, change control, once the project is baselined, change requests go through this process. As a general rule, each project's configuration management plan should define which project artifacts need to be placed under configuration control. You see, there's a lot of great content here. So the summary of it, my friends, is it depends. It says, whenever a change request may impact any of the project baselines, a formal integrated change control process is always required. You see that? So what you can glean from that is if it doesn't touch the baselines, a change request may not be required. We're not saying it's always, but may not. It depends on the company. It said every documented change request needs to be either approved, deferred, or rejected by a responsible individual, usually the project sponsor or project manager. The responsible individual will be identified in the project management plan or by organizational procedures when required. You see that? When required. The perform integrated change control process includes a change control board, which is a formally chartered group responsible for reviewing, evaluating, approving, deferring, or rejecting changes to the project and for recording and communicating such decisions. So there you have it. PMBOK 6 has some good information about that. So if we go back to the question and read it a little bit better, we can see here, A, implement the change without getting approval is not a straightforward, oh, do that all the time. No. And you wouldn't just implement the change without making consideration. So that's not the best answer. Let's take a look at option D. Inform the stakeholder that the change cannot be implemented. Why would you just do that without any consideration? See? So the question says, you are a project manager and you need to evaluate the impact, right? If it requires approval from the change control board. So how do you just magically tell them, oh, can't do the request? That doesn't make sense. So let's take a look at C. Ask the stakeholder to submit a change request to the CCB for analysis and review of the data. Now, while that is not a horrible option, let's look at B. Evaluate the impact of the change and determine if it requires approval from the CCB. This has got to be the better one, because if it doesn't need CCB approval, you know it's a waste of time telling them to review it. You have the power to do that. Now, I will say on most of PMI's exams, they bring in the topic of the CCB quite a lot. And in more cases than not, the CCB's involvement is relevant. I'll just say that, but it's not in every single case, so you got to read it carefully, especially in the world of Agile where there's no CCB. But if you're in a hybrid world, well, be aware of that as well. Okay, so the rationale, evaluating the impact of a change request and determining if it requires approval from CCB is an important step in change control, right? This ensures that only necessary changes are made and that the project stays on track. Let's move on, my friends. Question 50, it's a final one. You are a project manager for a software development project and you need to create a list of changes submitted during the project and their current status. What tool should you use? All right, this is quite straightforward. It's got some telltale signs as well from previous things we've looked at. Okay, so the best option to this, my friends, is none other than option B, the change log. That's the change log. It has all those requests. You're able to go in and see them and so on and so forth. If you've enjoyed this session, do hit like, subscribe, share with your friends. Let them know we've got over 2,000 videos on this channel. And if you're looking for additional training and help, you can always go on down to Praizion.com. We've got training coming up all the time, either for full-blown 35 contact hour training or just a little bit of secret sauce, which we call the PMP Exam Immersion. You'll find that one specifically on the website known as hpmexam.com. That's another website to check out, especially if you've already been for 35-hour training and what you need is a little bit of that secret sauce to get you in ship shape for your test. All right, so Praizion.com, hpmexam.com. Thanks for checking them out, and I wish you all the very best in your prep. You take care. Bye for now.